Anime is no stranger to odd trends that are not only illogical but fly in the face of convention, with perhaps amongst the most noteworthy for both the corresponding risk and yet proven track record of success being long-running anime that continue in perpetuity as if on a manga timeline, as opposed to the standard format of releasing a set amount of episodes to occupy a single season. And personally, I love these, this being the trend that got me into anime in the first place. I grew up with the big three, consider Hunter x Hunter and the Gray Man to be amongst my favorites, and have found plenty to enjoy in Katekyo Hitman Reborn, Toriko, and Black Clover. I have gotten so used and have immersed myself in this specific niche so often that in many cases, in fact, it is not only that I am unintimidated by a show's length, but would even say that it spurs me a lot of optimism at the show's potential. After all, the show's perpetuity means that something has resonated with a dedicated audience, and many of them do, in my opinion and experience, similarly resonate with me, delivering on the potential that their length promises. But if there was ever one anime in this category whose episode length is something that I would call a hurdle in spite of all this, it would be Gintama. Primarily because the bulk of Gintama is an episodic comedy, when this long-running format is best served for hyped-up action and emotional drama that spans multiple episodes, creating impactful moments of emotion that would be impossible if delivered in shorter bursts. At over 100 episodes in, I can't really say that Gintama has grown on me in the same way that other anime of comparable length have in far shorter spans of time, and not helping is that Gintama's first foray into action at episode 58 is somewhat clunky, contrasting later arcs by retaining its largely quirky tone for the purposes of keeping committed to its standard comedy in the midst of what should have been an otherwise dire situation. Later arcs do a much better job at balancing Gintama's action and dramatic moments with its parody roots, rest assured, but nevertheless, I hesitate to apply an "it gets good later, trust me" description to this show, as while the mediocrity of the first two episodes, which are themselves filler and which actually dissuaded me in my first attempt to watch the show back when I was a teenager, as well as the aforementioned roughness of its first action arc, I still find a lot of enjoyment in Gintama's moments of parody, and it's not like the canon comedy is of a notable downgrade to the quality of Gintama's emotion and action. However, that does not change that it started off as and continues to primarily be a parody of long-running action serials. One that kind of reminds me of The Eminence in Shadows in how it just rolls with the absurdity of the logical conclusion to its premise as a parody of something well established and familiar, but with numerous pop culture references that give it a surrealistic edge that makes it stand out as unlike anything else I've ever really encountered. Gintama is funny and memorable, but there is only so much that a parody can do, because a parody is by its very nature dependent on what we recognize the parody to be of, both specifically and in the abstract. It's a paradox of sorts, because the promise of Gintama at once serves as both the intrigue and the barrier to entry, somewhat erasing what Gintama is in the moment with the well-earned reputation that the major arcs have, at once being a dangling inevitability, but also a long-term payoff that can take hundreds of episodes to get to, and I'd go so far as to say that the comedy is underappreciated because of this. Comedy is subjective, and it's understandable that a parody that is just as long as amongst the longest action serials, but with less frequent high moments of emotional payoff, won't appeal to everyone, especially given the dated nature of pop culture by virtue of being pop culture. However, the bigger issue in trying to watch Gintama today is the stark distance between the promise of what it will become and the reality of what it is, to the point that infamously people online actually recommend skipping large chunks of Gintama to watch solely its highs. However, I'd say that like Assassination Classroom, Gintama is primarily a comedy with action drama highlights, and that its comedy, however off-putting it as the whole of the show, and the dangers that a Simpsons-like stigma of staleness can be, that Gintama is still worth experiencing in its totality. To end this video off, I've decided to try and recommend the following watch guide to ease potential new viewers into Gintama. That is, assuming of course that you, like me, had some issues getting through some of the early parts, eager for the potential that Gintama fans often promise without the asterisk of, it's largely a parody, that the action and drama doesn't begin until well after 50 episodes in, and that not every joke has aged gracefully. Make no mistake, try and enjoy Gintama for what it is rather than what it isn't, but I do understand that maybe you need a bit of a guide to help see what some of the hype is all about. Firstly, skip episodes 1 and 2 as they are filler. A bizarre choice to begin the series with, and thus are often recommended to be skipped given their lacking quality compared to what comes next anyhow. Don't worry, episode 3 is the actual beginning of the story, being the episode wherein Gintoki is introduced to Shinpachi. In episode 1, the main cast is already assembled, and every one of the recurring characters is thrown in for a brief moment to show their running gags at such a rapid pace that they all blend together, whereas episode 3 focuses only on 2 characters, with minor focus on Shinpachi's sister and the episode's villain to introduce the dynamic of the Odd Jobs crew. From episode 3, proceed to watch a show until episode 24, roughly the place wherein all major cast members have been introduced, and finally skip ahead to the Mitsuba arc, episodes 85 to 86, to get a feel for the emotional highs that Gintama can deliver if you want a microcosm of Gintama's potential, regardless of whether or not the comedy sits right with you. Then go back to episode 25 and just proceed chronologically from there. If you still aren't sold after watching the Mitsuba arc and feel like the parody aspects are either worth it or just as good depending on where you stand with your tastes, then I'm not sure what to tell you. My own journey with and into Gintama has been a bit difficult because of what I've described, and I hope that with this recommended watch order, it could help ease others in, hopefully in a more organic manner than I dealt with. Until next time, I am Balao-kun, and let me know what you think of Gintama in the comments section below. Again, I am over 100 episodes in and have found myself enjoying it for what it is, especially the comedy much more than I thought I would, and am curious on others' perspectives. And while you're down there, I'd appreciate a like if you liked the video.